Blue skies and green energy. This is the future the government dreams of. But for days when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, the nation needs a backup. And today the government announced plans to build new gas-fired power stations. The aim, the energy minister said, security, the threat, she added, a nation on its knees.
There are no two ways without it. Without gas backing up renewables, we face the genuine prospect of blackouts.
Imagine a world where electricity is generated in a cleaner and more sustainable way.
The government haven't said how many, but it's plants similar to this gas-fired power station in Greater Manchester they want more of. Their advisors, the Climate Change Committee, has previously said a small amount of capacity, perhaps just 2%, from plants like this was compatible with a decarbonised power system. Critics don't disagree. They do disagree, though, with the framing of the government's argument.
I think there's a lot of political game playing going on here by the government. They're clearly trying to force a wedge issue with Labour around energy supply and energy security.
But the government say, look, we are still going to need a tiny amount of gas going forward. They're providing it. They've got a point, haven't they?
Well, as the North Sea continues its decline, the gas that we burn in these power plants is actually going to come increasingly from abroad. Therefore, it's not helpful for energy security. It makes us more reliant on things like foreign gas rather than our own energy sources from things like renewables.
September 2023, the Prime Minister striding out to deliver his verdict to a nation.
I'm announcing today that we're going to ease the transition to electric vehicles.
The watering down of key green pledges, such as the ban on non-electric vehicles being moved from 2030 to 2035. Since then, many have questioned the government's commitment to a decarbonised economy. These are pretty dire warnings which you're responding to. But this is 14 years into being into power, having failed to deliver nuclear power plants. You've got a track record of U-turning on large-scale infrastructure like HS2, and a track record of shifting the goalposts on green policies like the banning of diesel cars. What faith can anyone in this room or voters at home have that you will actually deliver these power plants in a time fashion that, well, keeps the lights on?
We are the country that's added the most renewable capacity to our grid by one other country in Europe. So, if you look at all of the stuff that we've built since we've been in power, it means that now almost half of our electricity comes from renewable energy. What we inherited from the previous Labour government was only 7% of our electricity coming from energy. I would say that that is actually a revolution and something that not many other countries have achieved.
The focus shouldn't just be where the energy we use comes from, but using less of it altogether, say heat pump manufacturers ERA.
We talk about a kilowatt not used is the best kilowatt, right? So when we look at the housing stock in the UK, for instance, it's the leakiest housing stock in Europe. So we require more energy than any other country in Europe to heat our homes. Now, investments in making our homes more energy efficient will drive massive savings in energy bills, but also massive savings contributing to our net zero plans.
The government say they are committed to decarbonising the energy sector by 2035. 11 short years, critics say, that seems shorter every time they unpick a policy.
Paul McNamara there. Well, former senior UN climate advisor Tom Rivett-Carnac joined me a little earlier, and I asked him, first of all, if Britain needs more new gas-fired power stations.
Look, we are in the middle of an energy transition where we have made a clear commitment that we're going to decarbonise the electricity system. And that means shifting over fundamentally to different forms of energy, to wind and solar, but also to upgrades to our grid and to storage. And you could look at that question in a couple of ways. The first thing to say is that other countries are transforming. Sweden now at 68% renewables, Costa Rica at 98%. They are not investing in the past, they're building the future. And they're building the kind of infrastructure that we're going to need to actually facilitate our pathway to net zero decarbonised energy systems. So we don't need them if we are prepared to make the leadership decisions and the necessary investments to get us to where we know we need to go. This decision has not been made for energy or economic reasons, it's been made for political reasons.
It's the what happens with renewables on a cloudy, non-windy day argument. Rishi Sunak, in fact, used those exact words today. And the Energy Secretary suggested we could face blackouts if we don't do this. Do you accept that argument?
Look, transitioning the global system, it's not just the UK, it's all around the world, to net zero is complicated. It requires information, organisation and investment. It requires smart grids. It requires storage. It requires serious investment in energy efficiency. It needs home generation. These are difficult issues. Of course they are, that we need to address, but they're not insurmountable. Actually, all of those problems have been solved in isolated and in interconnected cases. There is no reason why we need gas to prevent blackouts if we make the other investments that we need to make to facilitate that kind of transformation.
The government says it's also about energy security. And there is a suggestion, isn't there, that if we do it the renewables way, suddenly we become reliant not on the old fossil fuel giants, but on China, which holds the key to so many of the minerals that are important in storing renewables and building big batteries and that sort of thing.
So it's certainly true that we need to purchase and we need to put in place infrastructure and investment that can facilitate a stable energy system in the future. But what we have with gas is a system that is enormously reliant on wild fluctuations all around the world. Right now, gas prices are 3 times what they were pre-pandemic. That is no stable future for what we need for ourselves and our children. We need to address these challenges of smart grids, of storage, of other different systems that can facilitate a stable and secure future. This is not about renewables and energy efficiency on one side and heat and light on the other. Renewables and energy efficiency are the way to stable heat and light and prosperity. Trying to create that dichotomy is just not reflective of reality.
Are we actually going to get new gas-fired power stations, or is this more about political messaging rather than the reality of what will happen?
Well, I think that's exactly the frustration, is that we are in an emergency where we need to be all hands on deck to actually make things happen, to invest and build the future. But instead, what we're seeing is political positioning that's happening in an election year where Rishi Sunak wants to signal to certain parts of his party that he's going to play a particular role in the anti-woke agenda and other elements that are becoming important to the Conservative Party. So I think it's very unlikely. Labour have been very clear about their climate change policy and the fact they want to lead the world. I don't think we will see new gas-fired power stations in the UK, and I certainly hope that's the case.
Tom Rivet-Carnac, thanks very much for speaking with us. Thank you.
Thank you.